Could I get your attention, please? Shh. It worked. Good afternoon. Please join me in welcoming our webcast viewers. My name is Jillian Riley, and I'm proud to be the president of the Canadian Club of Toronto and your host for today. Viewers, thank you for joining us. Each season, we strive to bring you a diversity of speakers who address issues that are top of mind. We are conscious of the rich diversity of our wonderful country and strive to reflect this not only in the topics, but in the speakers who present them. We are proud of our club's track record of providing a forum for decision makers and thought leaders to share their viewpoints with us. Shopify's COO and the editor-in-chief of the Toronto Sun will do that momentarily. Before I formally introduce them, let me tell you about a few of our upcoming events. On Friday, November 17th, the Honourable Reza Moridi, Ontario's Minister of Research, Innovation and Science, will be at our podium. And on November 22nd, we will hear from an esteemed panel around Canadian pensions and their success. To order your tickets or to learn more about the club, please visit our website at canadianclub.org. You can also join the conversation via Twitter and Instagram by following us at CDNCLUBTO or by using that hashtag. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Vice for generously supporting today's event. Vice is represented today by Sarosh Alvi. Thank you. And to our youth and young leaders present here today from the Fashion Management Program at Humber College, thanks to Kirkman Consulting, Inc., and York University students, thanks to York University alumni. We're glad you're here. If you could please stand up so we can acknowledge you. And now our guest speaker. Canada's retail industry continues to undergo major change. Toys R Us and Sears are the latest to fall victim to the changing consumer-driven retail market. Some international brands like Saks Fifth Avenue have opened their doors here in Canada. Amazon is shopping for a second headquarters, and online purchases continue their meteoric rise. So, what does the future of retail look like? Who better to inform us than Chief Operating Officer of Shopify, the e-commerce platform for small and medium-sized businesses? More than 500,000 businesses around the world rely on its multiple sales channels to drive growth. Harley Finkelstein is Shopify's COO. He is also an entrepreneur and lawyer, founding his first company at 17 while at McGill University. He completed his law degree and his MBA at the University of Ottawa. Harley is one of the dragons on CBC's Next Gen Den. Last year, he was inducted into the Order of Ottawa. This year, he received the Canadian Angel Investor of the Year Award, as well as Canada's Top 40 Under 40. Very impressive. Joining Harley in conversation is Adrienne Batra, Editor-in-Chief of the Toronto Sun and 24 Hours Toronto. You may have seen her on Fox Business News, CNN, and BBC. Adrienne is also a regular contributor on Canadian broadcast stations, including CBC National, AM 640, and CP24. And members and guests, please don't forget, if you have a question, we love to get questions, please fill out one of the Q&A cards that are on your table, and our staff will collect them. Harley and Adrienne, the Canadian Club of Toronto's podium is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jillian. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Adrienne Batra. Thank you very much for joining us here at the Canadian Club. In conversation at our table, we were discussing how they are trying to bring in new and diverse voices and unique perspectives. Well, I can't imagine anyone more unique and diverse of a perspective than yourself, Harley, so welcome. I know that there are going to be a lot of questions, so again, please submit those. We will get you to answer that. So let's start very broadly. What is the future of retail, and what does that mean? There's an easy one for you.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. So I think the future retail, at least from my perspective, has two major macro trends, macro shifts. And I've talked about this, so some of you that have heard me speak will have heard the story before. When I was 8 years old, and I wanted to buy that new video game that was about to come out, my dad and I would line up in front of the video game, the electronics store in Montreal, where we lived at the time, at 7 o'clock in the morning. Because at 8 o'clock in the morning, the doors would open, and every kid and their dad or their mom or whoever would rush into the store and try to grab that video game. And that is really how retail has operated since the beginning of time. John Wanamaker created the first department store on the planet in Philadelphia in 1876. And frankly, retail has not changed since then and even before that. And what retail was all about up until very recently was it was all about the retailers dictating to the consumer how the purchase should be made. So the retailer that sold the video game dictated to me and my dad that if we want to make this purchase, here's how we have to do it. You don't want to do that? Too bad, so sad. So that's the first shift that I think is happening. What I believe is happening today is that the consumer is beginning to dictate to the retailer how he or she wants to make the purchase. When, where, how, using what channels, using what payment methods. It's really about consumer choice. That's the first macro trend. The second one that I think is really important is this idea of disintermediation. Now, we've seen brands that have been vertically integrated for a very long time, a lot of the luxury brands, for example, where they design, they manufacture, they market, they sell, they own the entire stack of the retail chain. And that was limited to certain brands that had a lot of capital, that had a lot of resources. And what I'm seeing today is that companies and brands and manufacturers that don't necessarily have a lot of resources are also beginning to cut out the middlemen. So a good example of that would be a company that makes a skateboard. I go to work most days on a boosted board, as some of you have heard.
And isn't that what your CEO, wasn't he here selling skateboards?
Snowboards, actually. That's right, yeah. So I ride a motorized skateboard to work. I have two choices where I can buy this skateboard. I can buy the skateboard at Best Buy, and I can go into the store, and I can ask the clerk, the salesperson there, to talk to me about the skateboard. What is the range? When do I have to replace the tires? And more times than not, I will probably get a weird look because they're not going to know anything about this product because their job is to sell all these products and they won't have any in-depth understanding of any particular product. Or I can decide that I can buy that skateboard directly from boostedboard.com from the people that made it. Now the difference there is when I buy it directly from Boosted Board, who has an online store on Shopify, they keep all of the money that I pay for it. Therefore, they can charge me less money. I, as a consumer, can pay less money because there's no additional margin being paid to Best Buy. And my consumer experience is so much better because I can ask questions in real time about the skateboard. And I think the reason that in the past we as consumers were willing to give a Best Buy type retailer a profit margin was they added value to the chain. And the value that they added was the fact that they had a physical location nearby. That convenience of walking in, that distribution, that was worth something to us as consumers. And so we were okay with giving them some sort of rev share or some sort of commission for that sale. Well, what's happened is the internet has democratized distribution. No longer is it enough for a retailer just to have a store. They have to add more additional value. So both the idea of consumer choice and the idea of disintermediation, I think, are the two major macro trends. And I think that people talk about the death of physical retail, the death of stores. I do not believe that. I believe there's a renaissance happening in retail, both traditional retail and online retail. And I think the retailers, particularly the physical retailers that are going to be really successful in the future, they're going to understand that they have to add some value. And they may look like a Harry Rosen experience where you walk in and the person there knows your size, knows your taste, knows everything about that item. And so you say to yourself, I'm willing to pay Harry Rosen a margin above what those goods cost because they add value. But I think if you're just going to have a physical location, that is not enough to justify a profit margin as it once was.
There's constant conversations about being a disruptor. No one knows that better than me, working in a newspaper business, and things aren't going so well. But I want to talk a little bit about being a disruptor. Like Shopify's enjoyed an extraordinary amount of success in a very short period of time. You've had to grow, you've had to adjust, you've had to accommodate. How do you manage all of that while continuing to stay not only just relevant, but the platform where you want to see retail come to?
Sure. So on a personal perspective, as an individual, the way that, so this is my first rodeo, and Toby's as well. We've never ran a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company ever before. This is its first time for us. So for us, we had to get really, really comfortable with becoming uncomfortable. And that's been a huge advantage to us. It's been really great that whether it's coaching or it's mentors, people like Sarush, who's an advisor and mentor to me personally, having great people in my life that I can talk to, that I can get advice from, that I can learn from is really important. And Shopify is a culture of introspection and really personal growth as much as possible. We really want people to really push beyond their comfort zones. So that's the way I've been dealing with it on a personal level. From a company perspective, I think the reason that we've been successful is because if you were to walk outside right here on Front Street, I think, whatever street this is here, and you were to ask 10 random people what Shopify does, 9 out of the 10 would tell you that we enable e-commerce. We help people build online stores. But actually, that's not really what we do. We do a ton more than that. We have merchants that use us in their brick and mortar locations. We have merchants that just use us to sell on Instagram. We just announced our Instagram channel last week. We have merchants that use us to cross-sell on marketplaces like eBay and Amazon. We just want to help merchants, entrepreneurs, SMBs, big companies sell anywhere. And so I think the reason that we've continued to innovate, at least so far really well, is because we don't rest on our laurels. E-commerce we became the leader in e-commerce, and that was really great. But the future of retail is retail everywhere. And if it's retail everywhere and Shopify wants to be at the center of the retail revolution, at the center of small business and entrepreneurship, we have to have products that accommodate all of those retail channels. So that's a long answer to a short question. I think the reason that we've been able to continue to disrupt is because we do not look back on what we've done as anything that we should be doing in the future. We're happy. At some point, websites may go away. There's a really good chance that websites will go away at some point. If you look at a place like India, for example, they have leaped over PCs and laptops right to mobile phones. By virtue of that, most websites don't load really well on a mobile phone, and so apps are becoming more relevant, and new ways to engage are becoming more relevant. I think the companies that tend to lose their pace of innovation over time are the ones that say, well, we had this really great product from a couple years ago, we're just gonna keep innovating on that. We have no problem, terrible term, but we have no problem knifing the baby. We have no problem throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
There's some very smart people in this room because I don't understand half these questions, but I'm going to do my best.
I can help you. Yeah.
That's okay. It's okay.
So, Harley.
Are any of them doctors? Because some of you have terrible handwriting. Anyway.
Investment bankers are no better.
But they are very good questions, and please keep bringing them forward, and we'll have Harley answer them. And of course, the social media plug, the hashtag is hashtag CCT Shopify. Hashtag CCT Shopify. So if you like what you say, we're saying, you don't like it, throw us some bricks and bouquets. But be kind, remember, it was our birthday. You brought up Amazon. Let's talk about that. It's a big topic in the city of Toronto right now, whether Amazon will consider a city like ours or Calgary or Vancouver, Montreal as their next sort of big distribution center. Billions of dollars, many, many jobs. So I'm going to sort of put this in two parts because one of the questions from the audience is Amazon competition, a partner or an ally? And then secondly, because I think it is a bit of a different question, why should we try to have an Amazon in Canada?
So a couple things. I'll start with the first question. So Amazon's a partner of ours. They've been a great partner of ours for a number of years. And just to be clear, what that means is merchants on Shopify that use our Shopify platform, we have an integration to Fulfillment by Amazon, which is their warehouse and fulfillment facilities. That means that you as a small business who starts a company this morning in Toronto can open a store on Shopify, and you can leverage the economies of scale that Amazon has with their own fulfillment facilities. It's pretty good for entrepreneurs. You can also, as a merchant on Shopify, at the end of your season, if you have some inventory left over, you can easily click a button in the Shopify admin, and you can cross-sell products and clear inventory out on Amazon as well. So in general, we're partners with them, and we have a good relationship with them. I do think, though, unlike some other industries, in technology, every company needs to be a little bit paranoid of every other company. And the reason is, it's very easy in our industry to move into new businesses. So for example, Shopify once was an e-commerce platform. We have a payments business today. We have Shopify shipping today. We have a capital product today where we do cash advances for small businesses. And so technology companies tend to sort of expand. They call it land and expand. They have customers that focus on that come to them for one particular item, and then very quickly they expand into other areas as well. And so I think most prudent leaders in technology really do have a bit of a paranoia about all other companies, and I think that's quite healthy. That being said, from a consumer perspective, I just set up my 85-year-old grandmother, my bubby, with subscription of all the sort of weekly necessities she needs, whether it's toilet paper or detergent or shampoo. And once a week, she gets a box delivered to her house in Montreal with all the stuff she needs. That means in the middle of February, she doesn't have to run out of her house and schlep and put the boots on, and it's not great for her to do that. So from a consumer perspective, if you are buying a staple, you are buying something that is utility, something that has a UPC code on it, I really do believe Amazon has an economy of scale that makes it really a convenient, easy way to purchase. But if you want to buy a cool pair of sneakers or a cool bracelet or a cool hat, or you want to buy something that is really unique and different, or a motorized skateboard, that is not being sold on Amazon. That is typically being sold on a Shopify store. And so that's where we divide the line from the consumer perspective.
Let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship in Canada. There's been some have described it, this is Canada's moment. We have incredible businesses and companies that are being created and developed. But often, entrepreneurs get stifled too, through government policy, taxation, whatever, and you leave, you go away. What keeps you guys here?
So a couple things that I think are important to realize. And I would say that Shopify and Vice share this very much so. Shopify never set out to build the best company in Ottawa or the best company in Ontario or the best Canadian company. We set out to build the best company on the planet. And I think Vice did the same thing. We just happened to be based in Ottawa. Vice happened to be started in Montreal. So I think there's a certain level of ambition that Canada for a long time was lacking. I spent most of my life living in Canada, but I went to high school in the States, and so I sort of have this interesting juxtaposition of my teenage years listening to my American friends versus my Canadian friends. And most of my American friends, they knew what university they wanted to go to in like 9th grade, and they knew what they wanted to do in terms of after university, in terms of going to grad school in 10th grade. In Canada, we're a bit more modest, a bit more humble, and I think that's good. That makes us special. But I think sometimes we're often a little bit less ambitious. So for example, if you look at tech M&A and tech acquisitions, Canadian companies tend to be the acquired, not the acquiring. I think that's silly. We've often joked, frankly, publicly, that one day Shopify wants to buy Google. Will we ever buy Google? I'm not really sure. But I like that philosophy that explains, I like the connotation of that, because that's how I want all Canadian entrepreneurs to think, that they can go and buy the big hegemonic company in the US and Silicon Valley. So I think the ambition thing needs to get better. To your question why we stay here, I think Canada has been a competitive advantage for us. Access to talent here is unequivocal. We have some of the best schools, some of the best minds here. Loyalty here is far better than it is in the US. Average tenure of Silicon Valley-based companies is under 2 to 3 years. If you look at Facebook and Google and some of those companies, they tend to jump around. We have lifers at Shopify. Yeah. We have people that started with us years ago that will stay with us for a very long time, if not their entire lives. They are doing their life's work at Shopify. It is not a job for them. That loyalty is really, really important. Probably the third and last one I would say is that there's a focus that you can have when it's minus 40 outside that you cannot get in Silicon Valley.
No.
I know it's funny, but it's true. It's right. Like you can really focus in the dead of winter in Ottawa or Montreal or Waterloo or Toronto, whereas our staff in San Francisco, they're at some cool coffee shop with the DJ on the ceiling or something like that. So actually, I think Canada's been our competitive advantage. There was a difficulty initially for us, which was that it was tough to raise capital initially in Canada. So we ended up raising money from some US counterparts, US VCs, and then some Canadian VCs came on after. I would like to see more Canadian venture capitalists leading these rounds, coming in the Series A, not waiting for the endorsement from the American VCs to then pile on afterwards.
You got a pretty good audience to make that pitch to.
That's absolutely right.
You're in the right spot.
And that's one of the reasons that myself and a bunch of Canadian entrepreneurs now have become angel investors. Yeah. Part of it is that I believe in a lot of these companies, and I think I'll see an economic return. But some of it is that I actually believe in the paid forward approach to Canada. I think more of that is really important.
Where are we falling behind as far as technology is, again, disrupting so many aspects of our lives? We've seen big grocery retailers, they're now going to put in automatic. And I mean, for a whole host of reasons, they're responses to certain policies or whatever the case may be. But then we're going to be putting out a lot of people out of work. How do you sort of see, like if you had an opportunity to sit with a number of policymakers, which I'm sure you're afforded that chance, what do you tell them? What do they need to do to modernize? What do they need to do to continue to ensure that we're training and giving talent to the next generation, or even those that are in the sector now?
Yeah.
They're a little bit older, but they're not quite ready to leave.
So you talk a lot, you hear a lot about things like autonomous vehicles, for example,
Yes.
and what that's going to do to truck drivers, for example. You hear a lot about sectors like our oil and gas sector, natural resource sector, which is struggling right now relative to technology. So certainly things like training play a big role there. But I actually have a little more of a romantic vision or a romantic dream about all this stuff. I think a lot about this concept of life's work, the ability to do what you love doing throughout the entirety of your life. And when I compare my view about life's work, or this mentality, philosophy about life's work, with my parents or my grandparents, they think it's a really nice, cute little thing. Because for my grandparents, the idea of life's work was not something that they even thought about. They looked at work as survival. It was about putting food on their table and a roof over their head. And even for my parents, who are now in their late 60s, it was about putting good food or better food on the table and a better roof over their heads. And so for me, because the basic necessities, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, are mostly covered, it means that I actually can think about things like creativity and passion projects and all these different things. And what I'm hoping some of these things, I'm hoping one of the change that happens through the technology advancing and some of these jobs potentially being obsolete is that that woman or that man who goes home at night from their job that they absolutely hate and goes to their workshop or goes to their garage and they tinker and they make these beautiful children's toys, or that woman who makes beautiful jewelry around her kitchen table for her family, that they actually think about commercializing their hobby. They think about commercializing their passion. They start a store on Shopify or some other platform, and they actually do their life's work. And I think a lot of the advances you will see will actually help people or push people, and sometimes they won't be ready to be pushed, but it will incentivize them to think about, what actually do I want to do with my life, given that I don't have to drive a truck for 18 hours a day?
We have a number of questions from the audience, so that's great. I'm going to boil this question down, but I think it's a really good one, because it recognizes Shopify as a brand around the world. And as this questioner asks, not dissimilar to Nortel or RIM. But this is the question.
Yeah.
They all know what happened to those companies. So why did those companies, in your view, why did they fail and lose their leadership position? And then the follow-up is, how do you avoid that?
Yeah. So I'm going to say this because I really believe it. I hate the fact that Shopify is often spoken about in the same sentence as RIM and Nortel. There's a certain, maybe there's
I didn't write this.
No, I know, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine, yeah.
There's that guy over there.
Yeah. We're gonna, but I get it. Why do I get it? Shopify has 3,000 employees. We're a $10 billion publicly traded company. The comparisons are made to other big name companies in Canada, and Nortel and RIM certainly play a role there. And so I understand why people put us in the same sentence. But first of all, we need some new role models in this country. That's for damn sure. I don't know the inner workings of Nortel. That was, in fairness, that was before I was operating Shopify. I do know a little bit about BlackBerry. I know some of the people that work there. I've hired some people that work there. In some ways, to the point that I made earlier, that about us being, most people thinking we just help build online stores, but really we're a retail operating system at Shopify. I think in some cases those companies held on to their online store, their proverbial online store. They had a competitive advantage in something like smartphones, and I don't know, how many of you here wished that, how many of you here used a BlackBerry? Show of hands. How many of you here used BBM, BlackBerry Messenger? So there was a software play to make there, but that wasn't what they wanted to do. In fact, if you read a mutual friend, Sean Silkoff's book, Losing the Signal, they talk a lot about those conversations that many people inside of BlackBerry said we should focus on this BBM platform. They could have been WhatsApp, a division of Facebook now, but they could have been WhatsApp because that's what they were doing. They could have done cross-platform communications because we were all already using BBM. Most of us even still remember our BBM PIN numbers, right?
Yep.
Frankly, those of you that grew up in the 90s, you probably remember your ICQ number still too, right? And your AOL AIM numbers. So there was all these opportunities for BlackBerry and for RIM to expand beyond what made them special in the first place, which was this physical piece of hardware. And I think that they were scared they didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and they didn't want to do that sort of stuff. Whereas if you look at what Apple did, and you go back to 2003, 2004, they had this incredible product called an iPod. And they completely got rid of that business and replaced it with the iPhone. Most companies would not have let a product that had that sales cycle and that amount of growth and generally revenue from a particular product. Most companies would have been afraid to actually get rid of a product like the iPod. But if they wouldn't have done that, the iPhone never would have existed, and they wouldn't be what I believe is, as of today, a $900 billion publicly traded company.
I want to pivot a little bit to another broad conversation that's going on, and of course, that's women in tech. You know just as well as I, a vast majority of the venture capital dollars are not going to women entrepreneurs. So the question is, diversity increases innovation and real business dollars and opportunity. So how does someone like you in your position, how are you trying to help influence and gain those opportunities for many female entrepreneurs?
So first and foremost, I think that something that most people get wrong about this is they look at diversity as this checklist for like reasons like PR or reasons like they want to be known as having a diverse workforce. Let me be clear. If you're in a business and you're selling to customers that are both male and female, it behooves you to have a diversity of opinions and a diversity of backgrounds around the table. So forget the whole checkbox because you want to have a certain diversity split at your companies. It is good for business to have diversity. And I think people completely miss that, and they do it for the wrong reasons. That's the first thing. The second thing is, look, I'm a white male in tech. I basically was born on third base. I was. And I had parents who encouraged me. I had parents that supported me when I was young. I was born on third base. And so I think one of the things we have to do is we actually have to give an unfair advantage to not just women, but people that are diverse, people of different backgrounds, to ensure that they get as close to third base as possible so they can begin to actually have the same advantages that we had. I don't think tech has done a very good job with that. I think there's especially in Silicon Valley, there's a bit of a bro culture, which makes it almost unappealing for a lot of women to go in there. We got to change that entirely. I think there are a lot of good programs now. We're a big sponsor of Ladies Learning Code, which is now Canada's Learning Code. There are some good programs that are happening there, but we suck at this thing. And we need to do better. And we're doing a lot of things like Shopify, whether it's leadership training or it's identifying female leaders much early on and making sure they have the tools that they need to help run the business. We're doing a lot of stuff in that respect. But again, it's not a checkbox. This is just good for business.
And it makes sense. Someone in the audience would like you to sort of revisit what you said with respect to websites going away. And it's put in this context. Not everybody wants to do their business on a small mobile screen. We have an aging population. I mean, you talked about your grandma in Montreal. Aging population makes a difference in how we create new technology and how we get people to understand it. So I think that just expand on the website going away aspect.
So I'm not saying that there won't be websites at all anymore, but what I am saying is that, so for example, some of you may cycle. There's this really great app called Strava. Anyone of you familiar with Strava? Phenomenal app. So the Strava app is effectively, if I go cycling in downtown Ottawa, I can track the app, I can track my cycling, and as I'm riding through downtown Ottawa, I can actually see how everyone else that rode down that street, how they fared. Did they go faster than me, slower than me? Did they burn more calories? It kind of makes something like cycling by yourself a bit of a social community activity. Well, what's interesting is that once I hit a certain pace for one of my rides, and I come home and I log it, Strava now opens up this whole other merchandising and this whole other e-commerce platform where, because I was able to win this race, I now get this limited edition merchandise. That is a retail concept that was unheard of a couple years ago, right? Or the fact that I use Evernote to keep my life organized, my digital life organized. I can actually now buy products directly from the Evernote app. I think when I said earlier about retail being everywhere and the future retail being everywhere, that's what I mean by it. I don't think we're just going to go to a website, nor do I just think we're going to go to an online store. I think we're just going to go wherever is most convenient to us. And I may start buying my running shoes off a cycling app because that's how it's most convenient for me. Or it's a reminder that, hey, I need new running shoes because the cycling app tells me that I've been using the same pair of shoes for the last 6 months and they're probably worn out. Another example is my wife and I are building a new home right now in Ottawa. And there's two sites we're using a lot of. One is called House, some of you may know. The other is called Pinterest, which some of you may know. Up until recently, neither of those allowed you to purchase what you were pinning on Pinterest or what you were logging or bookmarking on House. That's crazy. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And so we as a company, we went to both those companies. We said Shopify wants to power commerce on Houzz. We want to power commerce on Pinterest, and more recently, power commerce on Instagram. So if you want to sell to me, you still need to have a great online store. If you want to sell to my wife, you probably have to have a great commerce integration into Houzz or Pinterest. If you want to sell to my little sister who's 21 years old, you pretty much have to do something on Snapchat, Facebook, or Instagram. But if you want to sell to my mom and dad or my grandmother, what they're doing today is they actually want to browse on their iPhone or on their laptop, but they want to complete the purchase in a physical location. They actually want to go in and try it on. Or vice versa, they want to go to a physical location, to a showroom, they want to try on the jacket, but then they want to complete the purchase on their iPad later on when they're on their couch. I do not believe these are competitive with one another. I just believe that is the future of retail. It's retail everywhere. And we are just going to decide as consumers how we want to purchase. So for people that are not necessarily don't necessarily want to use a mobile device, they may always use their desktop. But it may not be a traditional online store. It may be a maybe something like you're at a fashion show, for example. We did this really cool thing with Toronto Fashion Week, where as people were walking down the runway, there was a QR code on the screen. And using your phone, you take a picture of the QR code, and it takes you that exact item to purchase right then and there, already pre-populated in your shopping cart. I mean, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the future of retail being retail everywhere, and all this amazing innovation. It is going to be so much better for consumers. And so I don't necessarily think it's only going to happen on a mobile phone. It may happen on a desktop. It may happen on an iPad. Funny enough, my parents, I don't know if you've ever looked at some, like your parents' mobile phones, but their font is so damn big on these things, right? Like, it's amazing. I think my father has one letter per screen. Hi. You know? So that's what I think. I don't think it's just going to be a mobile device, although I do believe that these supercomputers we have in our pockets are going to be incredibly powerful. And I think that's going to be pretty cool. I would say, actually, on the point earlier that I talked about Best Buy, I've said this to the CEO of Best Buy, so it's not out of turn. I think what Best Buy should do is they should have these really small stores, almost like one of those Rogers stores, where you go in and their top 30 products are around there. You have sales staff in store who are so knowledgeable about every single product, and it's just a demo, it's just a showroom. You can play with the camera, you can ride the skateboard, and then afterwards they give you a coupon code and you can complete the purchase at home on bestbuy.com. If they did that, I would believe that they would deserve the profit margin that they're entitled to. If they're just going to have a physical store with someone who knows nothing about the products and add no value, I don't feel they justify their margins anymore.
Well, I think that's actually probably a good place to put our last question, because we are almost out of time. This audience member is thanking you for kickstarting the King and Portland Jobs and Construct, so that's wonderful. But specifically on bricks and mortar, when you watch a new mall going up and all of these big facilities, do you sort of sit back and think, why are you doing this? This is backwards. I mean, there's still a need for the consumer to physically go somewhere. But is this reasonable? Is it, you know, all of these logistics that it takes to physically build something versus going online? So they want to know, will we continue to see malls being built or logistics stores and drone delivery?
It's a long question.
You got 5 minutes to answer.
So I heard this great quote a while ago, which is that malls in America have been under-bulldozed. I believe that. I think malls in America have been under-bulldozed for sure. But I absolutely do believe you will see more malls and more storefronts, physical storefronts popping up. I think there's definitely a place for it. However, what I think you're going to see is that there's a great Canadian company called Frank & Oak. Ethan Song is a CEO, great Montreal entrepreneur, a really great guy. They have stores all over the country. They also have an amazing online store as well. Whether you buy something in his physical retail store in the Rideau Centre or in Montreal or in Toronto, or you buy it online, or you buy it using his app, or you buy it on one of the marketplaces that he cross-sells on, he does not give a shit. It's all retail to him. He doesn't care what channel you use. One channel feeds the other channel. But if you were to talk to a much larger retailer, if you were to ask the executive team at Toys R Us, they would say, well, we have online retail, and we have offline retail, and they're very, very separate. And we need in-store sales to be a certain amount to justify the upkeep of that store, to justify paying the overhead for that store. But if you were to ask Ethan, who I believe is exemplary of this new retail model, he would say, if all that happens in the store is that people come and try on the products, or they come in for a hot shave or a cappuccino, which they do as well, that's totally cool. I don't care where the purchase is completed. It's all just retail to me. And so I think there will be a place for physical retail. And we power these really amazing pop-up shops. We did Drake's pop-up store here, the Weekend's pop-up store here in Toronto. A lot of people just went in there to see the products and then bought it on social media afterwards. They didn't care about that. They just wanted to engage with their audience. And I think the retailers that will be most successful will understand that the future retail is channel agnostic. And by the way, when AR starts to really hit, there's this great app you should download. It's called the Magnolia app. Magnolia is a very famous home furnishing store out of the States. Using Shopify and the, now I'm getting excited, and the Apple AR kit, which just came out, the augmented reality kit, you can literally start placing objects, virtual objects, on your furniture. You can see the way a lamp is going to look on your table before you buy it. That is amazing. I don't care how old or how young you are. I don't care what your background is. That is an incredible purchasing experience. And by the way, that's going to be the standard operation going forward.
And that's almost like a video game. Harley, this was fascinating. We're
Yeah.
all going to be very eager to see what Shopify does next. And thank you very much for being here. It was
Thank
amazing.
you so much for having
Thank
me.
you.
Thank you.
Wait, hold on 2 seconds. Wow, Harley, on behalf of the Canadian Club of Toronto and everyone here today, I would like to express our sincerest thanks for sharing your retail industry knowledge and experience with us. You pointed out that there's a lot of transformation underway in the retail sector, consumer demand and innovation driving a lot of that. I liked your expression, though, retail is everywhere. I'm going to remember that. And the future in retail, it's not going to be online, it's not going to be in the mall, but it's going to be everywhere, omnichannel. We're very impressed with your insights, your knowledge, and certainly your passion. That came out loud and clear. And we look forward to watching the success of Shopify in its future. Adrienne, thanks for leading us in a captivating discussion and asking great and insightful questions. Your engaging personality certainly created a great environment for today. And I must say, having two Scorpios together worked very nicely. So happy birthday to both of you.
Thank you.
And we all wish you continued success in the future. Before we conclude, I would like to thank MediaEvents.ca, Canada's online event space, and VVC for live streaming today's event. I'd also like to once again thank Vice for its generosity in sponsoring today's event. It's both Dave Purdy as well. Didn't mention him earlier, but he's also a board member of the Canadian Club, so thank you. To learn more about the club, please visit us at canadianclub.org. And thank you again for joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we hope to see you again soon.